a trying year last year, kind of as I mentioned.
Hmm.
If you could just talk about 2024, what do you see the market going? What do you see for real estate, for multifamily, just in general, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad I have a crystal ball.
Welcome back to another season of the We're Invested Atrium Management Podcast. We are so excited to be presenting season 2. We have a very special guest here today, none other than the great Duane Anderson. How's it going, man?
It's good to see you, man. I'm happy to be here.
Likewise. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, we're kicking off season 2, and we want to do things kind of a little bit different here. Last year, we really highlighted a lot of personal stories,
Yeah.
trials, and triumphs. We want to do more of the same with a little twist at the end.
All
So
right.
I'll get us started. Tell the audience who Duane is. Who are you, Duane?
Man. Well, on a personal level, born in New York, Long Island, New York, in Hempstead.
Mm.
I used to joke and say I was really spent most of my time in Queens. But I'm a New York guy at heart. Moved down here when I was a kid still, so I can't really claim New York that much. I moved down to Florida, grew up in a little town called Spring Hill, and then made my way um, out here to Orlando for high school,
Okay.
and then eventually to Gainesville, Florida, with the University of Florida, go Gators, and then made my way back to Orlando, and I've been really here ever since.
Awesome. So I remember me and you first connected. We really hit it off last year at a conference in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I remember we went to a nice steakhouse. I think it was Bones, was
Oh
it?
man, that was good. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
those of you who don't know about
You
Bones,
gotta
please check
go.
out
You
Bones.
gotta go.
Bones was amazing.
Yep.
And I remember one thing that really stuck out to me was just your desire to really accomplish your goals. And we talked a lot about financial literacy,
Hmm.
a lot about, just the industry in itself and multifamily and just, kind of our vision for our lives and our families and whatnot.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what made you start getting into real estate, particularly the brokerage side and multifamily, and just kind of walk us through that timeline for you.
Yeah, I had a little bit of an interesting journey. I did not go to college or school for real estate.
Mm.
I started out with a totally different degree. And after college, I taught for a couple of years. So I was actually a middle school science teacher for a little while.
Mm.
And, an opportunity came up in the mid 2000s to get into, at that period of time, I was getting into mortgages, residential mortgage broker. And I didn't know that when I was entering the industry that I was getting in right as when things were ready to crash. And I got in, and as a result of what was going on in the market, and it didn't take long really, the market started to change, obviously with the subprime crisis, and the whole industry just crashed. And as a result, I was kind of, well, what do I do now, right? Got really intrigued in the real estate side of things.
Hmm.
So I, eventually ended up in the residential real estate side. And I remember meeting someone at the time period who said, "Have you ever thought about commercial real estate?" And I said, "What is that?" All my life, I'm a college educated guy, and was really never or really never knew what commercial real estate was. So he broke it down for me, and from that point I was really intrigued as to what commercial real estate is. I had no idea that there was this segment of real estate that it's commercially owned and there's investors involved and all of these types of things. And I learned and did a lot of research on the different types of product types and decided I wanted to get into the industry. And at that point, I decided I'm going to start calling firms, and I called all the big name firms, the CBREs, the Cushmans, all those firms, and no one would take my call. Obviously, I didn't have any experience. I had a real estate license, but it was all residential.
Mm.
And at the time period, a door opened up for me to interview at a company called Marks and Millichap,
Mm.
and I got my feet wet there. Learn the industry inside out, develop relationships, really from the ground up.
Absolutely.
So got into that sector, and did it for several years. I was at Marks and Millichap for about 8 years, and then transitioned over to where I am now at a company called Offered.
Awesome. I know you just mentioned you transferred. We'll get to that in a second. But just for those listening who might not be familiar with the industry and commercial real estate, could you just simply explain what it is that you do? Just highlight this is what you do and kind of the services you offer?
Yeah, I facilitate transactions between owners of multifamily properties and buyers of multifamily properties, and really it's in investment real estate.
Mm.
So a lot of these ownership groups that are out there, buy whether they're a private firm, whether it's a REIT, whether it's a syndication fund, whatever it is, they buy in apartment buildings in my sector for the investment. And depending on what their investment profile is, determines whether or not how long they hold the property for. If it's a short-term hold, everyone's got a different agenda, right?
That's so funny to me because I'm just thinking about like when I first got into the industry about 4 years ago, and it was kind of like when things were really taking off.
Yeah,
I feel like I saw every type of person try to get into the multifamily space.
yeah.
Those who wanted to start doing syndications,
Mhm.
those who kind of just saw the TikTok craze of like getting in real estate,
Yeah,
and kind of just figuring it out as they go. It was so funny for me because I just remember thinking, I'm like, man, I feel like everybody's an expert. And then
yep.
as I got older, more mature, I realized it's the quite opposite.
No,
There's a lot of
yeah,
people who are pretending to be experts and they're not. And, it's obviously we live in the social media phase and just things are obviously magnified and whatnot. But I say all that to say I have a question for you, and it's kind of putting you on the spot, but
yeah.
which asset or what type of deal is easiest for you to sell or to move? Like, do you like doing the nice trophy asset, that may be brand new and built, or do you like kind of doing the value add because you can sell investors on the upside? I know it differs between areas,
Yeah.
locations. I know you cover all of Central Florida.
Mhm.
So walk me through like what is your kind of preferred client and kind of which is easier for you?
Yeah, I've done both ends of the spectrum. I've done small deals, I've done larger deals, and it's interesting because I don't have the which one I really prefer to do. I think each deal is unique.
Mhm.
What I do like to do, however, is the deal where we can really pitch that deal and get really excitement.
Mm.
The hardest thing, and anyone who's in the brokerage business knows this, is to sell deals that are really unsellable. And it's difficult because everyone's got a different perspective of what a value of the real estate is, right? As a seller, you think it's worth a lot more than probably what it is, right?
Yeah.
And then as a buyer, you're completely looking at it from a different lens.
Yeah.
You're looking at it as, all right, well, this is where I think the value comes in. And sometimes it's difficult to get those two sides to agree. I like it when the sides agree, right? Whether it's a
Makes it
value add
easy.
opportunity or a trophy asset. Trophy assets are fun, obviously, because I like visiting those properties. I like going
Yeah.
to those properties. I've sold deals where it's like, this is a really nice property to go visit, and then I've some properties not so much, right? Where it's it's like, oh man, I gotta go out to this property. It's a little rough. That area is a little rough.
Yeah.
But I've made deals happen on in both occasions, and it really just, if it's a sellable deal, if it's a deal that attracts a lot of attention, the ideal client or seller for me is someone who understands that this is the valuation of the property. There's a motivation to sell,
Mhm.
and there's a real reason to get a deal done. I can really, kind of wrap my hands around those types of deals,
Mm.
get a lot of investor interest, and generally get the deal done.
That is so good, and I'm just thinking more about too, like the highs and lows of the business.
Yeah.
Like kind of like I was talking about earlier in 2020, things kind of were picking up.
Mhm.
2021, it really exploded.
Yep.
2022 was good.
Mhm.
Last year it came down quite a bit. I think
Oh yeah,
pretty
big
much
time.
every statistic I saw said that sale volumes were down, by like 30-40%
Yeah.
across, most markets.
Yep.
So I wonder if you could speak to that side of the brokerage because that side is actually not presented on social media. Most people don't get to hear the truth about, when you come in a cycle and it's down and there's less volume, there's less transactions. What's the mentality like? How do you navigate that? With the conversations with your internal team,
Yeah.
even your family or just the sellers that you're talking to, like what does that look like?
Yeah. Real estate is cyclical, right? And for the newbies that get into it, you can't really process that yet, because if you're getting into a middle of a really hot cycle, which is what I had done back in the mortgage business. I got in the middle of a hot cycle. I'm like, oh, this is great. Things are moving along. There's lots of activity, and then you've got those down cycles, and a lot of times it's things that you can't control, right? I mean, for in the multifamily business, we got hit really hard, obviously, with rate increases across the board. multiple rate increases, which really is super important for investors when they buy a deal, right? How much is the cost of debt?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we are really dealing with a huge insurance crisis here in Florida, where, in many cases, a lot of the owners I spoke to, saw over 100% increase in some cases
Oh my
in
goodness.
insurance premiums. Well, that's a huge chunk of your return on investment, on your
Absolutely.
return on capital, whatever. And as a result of that, it took valuations down. It from no fault of your own. You could be an operator. You could be running your property well. In fact, you could even increase collections. You could increase, value. Your rents are you're higher than they've ever been. But now the value of your properties dropped 25% because of factors that are completely out of your control. And those are hard conversations to have with owners that are looking to potentially transact. Right? Maybe they're at the end of their hold period. Maybe they got debt coming due, and now they're looking at their property and realizing a 25%, loss of value. So, you mentioned a lot of the newbies getting into it and people not understanding. It's you got to play the long game. It's just like with anything else, just like with the stock market, just like with any other type of investment. It's the long game, and you really don't look at year over year is nice to look at those metrics, but you really got to look at maybe taking a step back and looking 5 years, 10 years, and what's going on in multiple real estate cycles to really kind of assess, how well you're doing. Because I mean, last year, no matter how good of a broker you are, right, you could start to question, man, but if you've been in the game long enough, you understand that these come, and so it's kind of like in the sports world, right? You have an athlete that says, I'm going to have good years, I'm going to have down years, but that doesn't make me any less of a good athlete. You're going to have those times where you got to just realize I got to focus on the long game. I got to focus on preparing myself, being the best I can be, no matter what. And as a result, if you take a step back at their career, I'm like, that was a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very good point too. It makes me think about just in any industry or any line of business. There's obviously, new people, average players, and then there's great ones. And much as you say, like in sports, like basketball, football, or just anything, there are people who are above the rest for whatever reason, whether it's work ethic, whether it's just experience, knowledge, or maybe just even a little bit of luck. It makes me think about, those who probably experience the down market and say, you know what, I'm out. I can't do this. Like, I got to go find a new industry. I know on my side, on the buyer side, I saw a lot of like people who were doing syndications drop that title quick. They went to do something else. And I was like, wow, like all these people are leaving the space. And I thought like, they were killing it or for lack of better words, just having a great run. And then eventually, that kind of, like you said, it ran dry. And then you kind of saw who the real players were, the real operators who were still trying to get deals done. Like you said, trying to understand better seller expectations, the adjusted value, because it was tough on the underwriting side for us, trying to account for, it's so funny because I remember when I first started underwriting, we were doing like $800 a door for insurance. And then I started getting quotes from agents and it was like 2,000 a door. Or like, I think the best I was getting was like 1,600 a door. And I'm like, this is crazy. It's doubled. Like, how can these properties cash flow? It was absolutely insane.
It eats up your NOI dramatically, right? I mean, if you're budgeting out for what the rent is going to be in that property, and there was a period of time where, rents would increase dramatically, right? You found a property that was underperforming, and let's say the rent was going for $750 per unit, and you go in there and you realize that you can add value, maybe spend around $12,000 for that unit, and go in there and now achieve, $1,500 rents. That's fantastic. That's a win, right? But now you're looking at a situation where those rents, while they may be as high as they were before, 15, 16, 1,700, $800 a door for insurance is now over $2,000 a door, right? And if you've got a situation where you're buying a property, you got your previous property, you were getting an interest rate at like 3.5%. Now you're looking at 7.5% or 7%, and it's just a totally different way of underwriting it now, because even though the rents have been achieved, your NOI is being eaten up by all of those other third party, those other types of metrics. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to ask too, kind of like my follow up question to that. Just in your experience with being in the broker side and selling multiple assets, what separates an average broker from a great one? Like, what would you say are like the three main differences if you had to point out between someone who's just in it, doing okay, all right, and then someone who's like top tier?
it's kind of going back to what I said earlier about having a long-term approach, right? If you get into the business thinking at a hot time and you pop off a couple of deals, you're really not getting you're really not understanding the business, right? You're kind of riding the wave, right?
Mm.
You're benefiting from a hot market. You're benefiting from the deals just kind of falling in your lap as a result of things happening. But you haven't really developed long-term relationships. You haven't really seen cycles go through. Really, success is just longevity, and it's just being able to stick it through multiple markets, develop relationships. People will come and go, and you're reaching out, and you're reaching out, and you're constantly staying in front of people. That's really it's not anything incredibly magical. It's not anything incredibly special. It's just being consistent, and it's like that in a lot of businesses. Going back to the sports world, it's just being consistent, showing up every game, putting in 100% effort. Putting in 100% effort if your team is 3-10 or if you're 10-3. You know what I'm saying? It's this, you're putting in the same effort and realizing that, all right, next year is a different year. I'm going to come back. I'm going to work on my skills. I'm going to develop some more skills, and now potentially be 10-3. It's the same thing. In a market like this, what we're seeing now is a great opportunity to kind of deepen and strengthen relationships. Maybe have conversations with people who wouldn't take your call last time because they were getting inundated by 150 different brokers.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's only 20, and now you're able to have conversations with them because you're able to provide them value, information, let them know kind of what you're seeing out there in the marketplace. And that's how relationships are formed, and that's how potentially when the time is right, deals get done.
Absolutely. That's such a great perspective on just consistency. Again, in any line of business, consistency is the number one thing. If you want to be great, if you want to achieve your goals, you have to day in and day out show up. Showing up is half the battle.
Yeah, it's funny because it's the work behind the scenes, right? I mean, like you mentioned earlier about everyone's putting out TikTok videos and everyone's having their seminars and boot camps and all this kind of stuff, and that's what they do, right? But behind the scenes is you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent. I know you guys were probably underwriting deals in last year's market, right?
Yeah.
And you were still looking at deals, and you had to turn some deals down, and realize and kind of stick to your fundamentals. And that's another key part of it too, man. Sticking to your fundamentals and realizing you don't get caught up in the huge wave of what's going on.
Yes.
And just kind of saying this is what we understand is going to happen. This is how we underwrite deals. This is where we see this deal getting done, and we take a patient approach because there's going to come a time period where those who were incredibly overpaying or just didn't really understand how to underwrite the deals. Now they've got to be in a position where they got to liquidate, and those who were patient are able to come and get them.
That is so true, and I can honestly say, just in my personal experience, last year alone, I learned so much than the other 3 years previous.
Of course.
In the downtime, because one, like you said, we had to have the patient approach, and I think we only transacted on 1 or 2 deals. And then I think we probably transacted on maybe 1 or 2 land sites as well, but very kind of like I would say slower than usual year for us. But what I did see was I saw a lot of deals to where operators have to give the keys back to the bank. Or sellers. One deal I saw that it closed in 2021 or 2022 for X amount, and then the next year, 18 months later, they were selling it for significantly less. And I said, wow, like, man, if we would have bought during the hype, if we'd have just fell into it, we could have risked making the wrong decision just because we felt the pressure to get something done. And I just remember thinking to myself, we were offering deals, and I'm like, these do not cash flow. Like, how are people buying this? And I was like, man. And then I learned about the bridge debt, and people were taking all this risky maneuvers and not practicing the fundamentals. And I was like, man, there's no way. Like, I would never raise money and then try to risk it that way. Like, that was insane to me. So last year was a very valuable year, and just the real estate industry in itself.
You learn everything that you need you learn the most in the down markets,
Mm.
and that goes from an owner side and also goes from a broker side. And I can't begin to tell you how many stories I've heard of businesses, whether it's a brokerage business or a broker's personal business or an owner's business, who really put the fundamentals together in a down market, and they were able to just catapult out of that when things turned because they had the fundamentals and they knew exactly what they were doing. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I really do. For an ownership group that's maybe saying, man, we've been underwriting these deals and they're just not penciling. I think that things are going to get a little bit better for them, and they're being committed to their strategy. It's going to work out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Looking forward to 2024 being a great year for us because we've been patient and we're ready to transact. Moving on a little bit, I know you kind of mentioned earlier that you were at Marcus & Millichap, I think, for 8 years, and now you're at, say it again, Offered. Offered, correct. How has that transition been for you? What does that look like? And I've actually noticed a few of my buddies in the brokerage side have switched brokerages. Just talk about your experience and what you've learned.
I had an amazing experience at Marcus & Millichap. I learned everything I need to know about the business there. I have nothing bad to say about my experience there. This was a vertical move for me. It was an opportunity to kind of move into a role where I now cover the entire state of Florida for this firm, and just the opportunity to really just kind of grow, build out a team, and develop and do some things on a level with a firm that's kind of really cutting edge. Has more of a startup mentality, and really just kind of growing that platform. I had no intention of leaving, to be honest. But the opportunity presented itself, and it's better to take that risk and see where it takes you, as opposed to just sitting back and saying, well, and then wonder what could have been.
Yeah.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited, and I'm really looking to develop some relationships that I wasn't able to develop before, and really have some nice conversations with some ownership groups, and really kind of understand, what they're looking to do in the market and how I can kind of fit into that puzzle. For them, and just really just learning more. Everywhere I go, I just want to learn as much as I can. I just want to keep growing and stretching myself, getting out of my comfort zone, and really just continuing to develop myself and develop others.
Absolutely. First off, congratulations on the move. Very excited for you. I know this was a trying year last year, kind of as I mentioned. If you could just talk about 2024, where do you see the market going? What do you see for real estate, for multifamily, just in general, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad I have a crystal ball. It's interesting because I think, everything I've read, and I do read a lot about the industry from multiple angles, multiple sources. Everyone's kind of pointing in a positive direction for 2024. We're expecting and hoping that rates will show some sort of decline. That's a huge part of it right there, right? I mean, if rates can start to decline, the cost of capital is cheaper, then obviously you can go after deals with a little bit more certainty. We're hoping that the insurance market gets a little bit nicer as well, being able to see some rates drop. Hopefully some carriers and some more groups will come in here into the state of Florida and really kind of make things a little bit easier on that perspective. If those things happen, I do see an uptick in transactions. There are some groups that will need to transact for whatever the case may be, right? Maybe they bought a property at incredibly low debt, and now it's time for a refinance opportunity, and they're just looking at the numbers just aren't making sense, right? They're looking to exit, or whatever the reason may be. There's multiple reasons why groups have to exit. There's no shortage of buyers right now. There are plenty of well-capitalized groups, and there's tons of dry powder, to borrow an industry term, on the sideline that is just waiting for deals to open up, and they're just looking to make those deals happen. And Florida is a great place for that because every market, just about every market in Florida, there's very low vacancy. There's an incredible amount of rent increases that have stuck, and so it's a market where an investment group can come in from day one and kind of implement their plan, their business plan. It's a market where everyone's looking to transact. The numbers have to make sense, and so we're hoping that some of those things will allow for some transactions to happen a little bit better, and hoping to be a part of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I try to read a lot and just stay educated as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
especially like Wall Street Journal and LinkedIn, and just
Mhm.
always viewing statistics and data. And
Yeah, I know you're active on LinkedIn.
I,
I see it all the time.
then I'm really trying to build that presence
Yeah,
because I just want to be like you said. I want to grow. I want to know people. I want to be connected to people who are doing big things. I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
just be educated. So I'm definitely trying to grow that presence. But one thing I was going to add is just I agree. I see a lot of people being more optimistic just
Hmm.
about the market in
Oh yeah,
general
yeah.
because we kind of had a halt on the rate hikes a little bit, and then
Hmm.
I've been talking to a few insurance guys. Rates
Yep.
have been somewhat reasonable on certain type of product and certain locations, and so people seem to be more optimistic and somewhat rightfully so. But
Oh
like you
yeah.
said, we don't have a crystal ball.
Yep.
None of us know for sure, what the cap rate to be
Yep.
in the next 6 months or
Yep.
like where everything is going to be at. So that's the fun of it. That's the joy, the
Yeah.
excitement of playing the game.
Yep.
Like at the end of the day, we all are trying to somewhat accomplish the same thing
Yep.
and achieve success in business and financial
Yeah.
growth and all that. And so that's the process. That's the game.
Yeah. Deals always get done. There's got to be reasons for deals to get done. It just depends on what volume that it happens at, right? There's got to be certain outside factors that are going to lend to a more frictionless environment of transactions. And once again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do see an uptick in volume this year in 2024 for various reasons. Groups that have to transact, maybe they got floating rate debt, whatever the case may be, things are going to need to happen. And I think in this particular business, those who have to do something are more willing to kind of meet the market and make things happen.
Mm.
In the previous environment we were in, there was a lot of opportunistic selling.
Yeah.
Groups that were just like, we would pitch to a group then and say, let's underwrite your property, let's see what the valuation would come in, and we tell them their valuation. They'd be like, "What? Really? I can sell it for that much?" Sure, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that lend to that. Low rate, low debt. At that time period, insurance was still pretty reasonable, and there was just a lot of money coming from other parts of the country. If you're in a really low cap rate environment in California or New York, and you're coming to Florida and you're buying a deal at twice twice the cap rate, yeah, they'll jump
Makes
all over that.
sense.
It
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Especially since we didn't have things like uh, um, um, any housing issues. I can't think of the term right now, but when there where your rents are not capped.
Yeah.
It was pretty much wide open here, where an investor could come in here and buy those deals, and Florida just kind of lent to that because there was migration into the state at a rapid pace that actually
Absolutely.
picked up during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So all the fundamentals were here, and so I think for 2024, if some of those things can start easing up, there's buyers that are ready to get deals done, ready to make deals done. Looking forward to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're just in the first month, so we have another 11 to go,
Yeah,
and to see how things play out. I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show in season two, want to do it a little bit different.
yeah,
I really tried to impress upon, one, allowing the guests to tell their story and to really provide, education moments to our audience about what they do, what they see in the market and in the industry. I wanted to switch it up because I wanted to play just a quick little game, just like rapid fire questions.
all
And
right.
so essentially, I'm gonna just pull three questions out of my hat,
Okay.
and it just shows more of your personal side outside of being the businessman. And
Yeah.
I just think it would be a cool segment. All right, so first question.
And I didn't get these beforehand,
He
by the
did
way.
not get it beforehand, so he is on the spot right
I'm
now.
really
He
on the
has no
spot.
idea what I'm about to ask. All right, first question. Who would you say is the greatest leader that you have ever seen?
Oh man, that is one that I know personally, or one that I've seen from afar.
Either
Like,
or.
I'm really big into sports, so I kind of instantly think of like great coaches.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um,
We had two that just left the game, Saban and
yeah,
Belichick.
Saban and Belichick. Belichick was a great one, and I can actually remember when Bill Belichick, because I'm a Giants fan from I was born in New York.
Yeah.
And I remember when he was our defensive coordinator back when we won
Mm.
the Super Bowl. But yeah, great leader, coaches that can motivate. Because if you think about it on a level of the sports world, right, and you make it to the highest level, whether it's the National Football League or the NBA or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be, you are already part of the 0.1%, right?
Absolutely.
And so to be able to win on a championship level, someone like a Phil Jackson that did that for many years, that takes an extraordinary amount of leadership, because these are all of them. You're playing against the greatest athletes ever, and you've got great athletes too, but you've got to lead them to not just perform, but to win games. So that's instantly what I think of is great coaches that inspired and brought the best out of their team.
I love it. I love it. All right. Second question. Kind of on the same token. This was already prepared, but favorite athlete. Who's your favorite athlete?
Yeah. Might be biased here because, so is this great favorite athlete of currently, or my favorite athlete like of all time?
You could share either or maybe share both, currently and all time.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of say an interesting thing currently. And I got a lot of respect, not necessarily my favorite athlete, but but athletes that I admire because of their work ethic, their tenacity, their commitment to excellence. I think of like a LeBron James, I think of like a Michael Jordan, guys like those who were just on another level of commitment to excellence. And you read their stories, and it's just like what they're doing is just on an incredible level. Yeah. Tom Brady, another one who just commitment to excellence, just developing their skills. It's one thing to make it to the league, man. It's one thing to make it to the league, but to get to the point where you're consistently winning,
to be considered in the GOAT conversation, different ball game.
That's the cream of the crop. That's another level. And a lot of athletes would be satisfied with getting to the league and securing the bag, right? Getting a lot of money, and a lot of them, will do that, and they'll make a ton of money in the league, and they may or may not win a championship, but they've made a lot of money. Yeah. These guys, they went into the league and they excelled, and they made a ton of money. Tiger Woods in his prime, they made a ton of money, but they were just committed to just winning and being great.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. When you said LeBron, my ears perked up because I debate Adam. He's one of our principals at Atrium, and he loves Jordan. I'm like, LeBron, dude, come on. We have this debate all the time.
Yeah, you know what? I will say this, and I have this debate with my friends too. You really can't compare the two. Yeah. Because different eras, different types of style of play. But I respect both players immensely because of how they were able to succeed in their eras. Michael Jordan was 6-0 in the championship. I mean, he was a closer. Yeah. And LeBron for his just incredible longevity, man. I mean, he's 39 years old and still performing at a peak level.
Crazy.
Obviously holds multiple records now, including most points ever.
Yeah.
I mean, much respect to that type of commitment, because, what's the average length of time in the league?
It's probably like 3, 4, 5 years, somewhere around there.
At the most.
Yeah.
So he's been doing it for, 19?
Yes. Oh my goodness. However long. He's been in there since I was like 5. So I'm 25 now. That's cool. Okay. Last question. Favorite book and why?
It's going to be so cliche. Think and Grow Rich was a huge one for me.
That's a great one.
And the reason being is because I believe that every book was birthed from that book, right? And so, Jim Rohn, obviously, to just whoever the authors that had books that came from that one, Think and Grow Rich was kind of the catalyst for that. There was a book that I read that really also kind of impacted my life a while back called The E-Myth. It was by Michael Gerber. Another one called The Entrepreneurial Myth is what is that was another big one that really impacted my life, because there's a difference between being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. And he really kind of laid out that foundation is like, listen, you're not an entrepreneur. This is how to become an entrepreneur. This is how to scale your business. And so you want to grow something where you can take a step back from it, it's running itself. But yeah, those were really solid books for me, man. That really kind of, but Think and Grow Rich was kind of like the.
That's a great one. I love that book as well. That's one I try to read every year. I'll throw one in there, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I love that book as well. Like, it just really gives you the framework for just not, I would say, real estate, with business, financial literacy, just education in general, how to think about life, even. You know what I mean?
It's a life. So to be successful, man, and you can't. There was another book I read called Total Leadership. And it's like you cannot be really successful until you have like this balance of everything in your life, right? You could be great in business, but if your home life is really bad, you're gonna be out of balance, right? If you've got, your home life and your business life is great, but you're not taking care of your body, you're not taking care of your health, right? Then you're out of balance. If your spiritual life is out of whack, it's just all of this. If it's not in tune and balanced, then you're not really achieving your peak performance. You're not doing the best. And so not having that balance, you're not going to really have long-term success. For me, it's not just about business, but it's about life.
Yeah.
And if you can apply these things to your life, it just absolutely will change your life.
I love it. I love it. Really appreciate you for coming on, man. As we wrap up, do you mind just telling the people where they can find you at social media? Kind of where's the best way to access you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's a great way to connect with me there. My name, Duane, Duane Anderson, Anderson. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm an open connector. Would love to connect with you on there. Shoot me a message. Would love to connect, get on a call. If you're in the multifamily business, whether you're an owner, a broker, whatever the case may be, let's connect. I believe in this business. It's so important to develop relationships.
Absolutely.
I know with us, how we kind of met and then, went out for dinner in Atlanta and just kind of just kept it up over the years. It's just been awesome. I appreciate relationships, man, because that's how things happen.
Absolutely.
And that's how ultimately deals can get done. But most importantly, man, you're just developing relationships and even friendships in this business. It's so important.
Isn't it fun to work with genuine good people? Like that makes it just life worth doing stuff with.
Yeah, it's some, there's competition is great, but you get so much more done together.
Absolutely.
I've heard a saying that if you want to go fast, you do it by yourself. If you want to go far, you do it with others.
Yeah.
And that's the key, man. It's just like, if you really want longevity in this business, if you really want to succeed, develop relationships, man. You will amazing things will happen. That's the secret sauce.
I love it. We'll end it right there with the secret sauce. Duane, thank you for coming, man.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me. I had fun.
Thank you.
We're Invested Podcast is produced by Atrium Management Company. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.